Hello and welcome to Produce Talks, the CPMA podcast. I'm your host and CPMA Education Manager, Ian Brody. A quick reminder before we begin that May is Learning Month at CPMA. We are offering member companies a free trial to our e-learning courses, Produce Basics and Produce Essentials. For more information, you can contact me at ibrody@cpma.ca. That's IBRODIE at cpma.ca. This month's episode is all about digital marketing and specifically sponsored content through social media influencers. There's a few buzzwords in that sentence, but we'll be breaking it all down. We'll be joined by marketing manager at NatureFresh Farms, Kara Bader, and blogger and dietitian, Noelle Martin. Later on, we'll also have a conversation with dietitian, YouTuber, and author Abbey Sharp. Here we go. So we're back from the CPMA annual convention and trade show in Montreal. The level of online engagement on social media by exhibitors and attendees was really notable throughout the convention. The hashtag CPMA 2019 was actually trending across Canada during the trade show. We really saw exhibitors and company reps engaging with food bloggers, with dietitians, and of course on their own social media accounts, sharing photos and videos of their booths, connecting at receptions, and really sharing those experiences on Instagram and YouTube and Twitter. A lot of companies are embracing that world of social media, and within that world includes brand influencers, which is our main topic today. What it really comes down to is a social media user with enough followers and enough credibility to have influence. Now, there are plenty of influencers out there with varying levels of awareness and credibility. I mean, you've got the king of pop culture, Doug the Pug, and we're talking about a dog with close to 4 million followers on Instagram and 3 million followers on Twitter. And as an example, Doug the Pug is dressed up on St. Patrick's Day as a leprechaun, selling you Lucky Charms. But then you've also got some more credible influencers out there, such as chefs and dietitians in the food industry. Now, by no means am I an expert on the subject. Most of my Instagram pictures are of my dog, Winnie. So we have a couple of influencers on the show today. And we kick off today's episode with a conversation with Kara Bader and Noelle Martin over at NatureFresh Farms. Welcome, Kara and Noelle.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
So, Noelle, I just want to say before we begin that I love your Instagram page at Motherhood and Meals. You really get a sense of that focus on family.
Thank you. That means a lot.
I'm going to start with you, Noelle. You're a registered dietitian. You're also a blogger and involved online. How do you define what it is that you do? You know, do you consider yourself a dietitian first, or a blogger second, a blogger first, or a dietitian second?
It's a great question. I think in everything that I do, I would, in terms of like the professional realm of my life, I would think of myself as a dietitian who does a variety of things. I'm definitely an entrepreneurial at heart. I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And so the opportunity to reach others through a variety of mediums has always been important to me. So whether it be through private practice or teaching at the university or blogging a recipe or a post on Instagram or more recently doing some YouTube videos with NatureFresh, these are all ways that I have the opportunity to reach others with simple, realistic ideas of how they can fit whole foods into their everyday life. And my focus has really been to help in terms of moms and kids and just getting shifting that perspective, because the reality is that healthy eating can sometimes feel overwhelming. And so if we can offer ideas for simple and quick meals that are nutritious and taste good and ways for, exposing kids to different types of foods and that type of thing, then I feel like I've kind of accomplished my mission as a dietitian in a variety of ways.
For sure. So what do you think of the current buzzword influencer?
It's a great question. To be honest, I've probably used it less than a handful of times because it's definitely not a title that I would give to myself. I am a dietitian who has chosen to create an Instagram feed as a medium to reach others, but I don't at all consider myself to be what I would think of as a social media influencer. I'm not on there to try to swayed someone for sure to buy something. I'm more there to educate them. And if they choose to go forward and purchase that or make something part of their life, that's great. But I don't ever want people to feel like I'm trying to influence and push them.
Right.
The only way that I think I feel comfortable with the word influence is a positive influence of having more whole foods as part of the everyday diet. So can I have a positive influence by inspiring someone who feels like they don't have time for dinner between work and getting to hockey practice? Can I inspire them? And maybe you could use the word influence there to see how it can be done in a quick and easy way.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because online, especially on YouTube and Instagram specifically, you really do see a variety, I guess, of influencers. And I think that level of authenticity, I guess.
Authenticity.
Yeah. So I think that level of authenticity is really important.
It's definitely something that's been very important to me. And you would see, as you said, you've been following my Instagram, which I so appreciate. And you might notice that I quite often will talk about things just as I'm making a meal, like as I'm making a lunchbox or as I'm making a dinner, because that's my life. And that's more, if we think about the realm of influence, that's more where it would come from, is just showcasing, here is how I use these products or make these recipes or whatever it is that I'm talking about in my everyday life. Mm-hmm. And I hope that comes across as authentic and relatable. And hopefully moms are thinking, oh yeah, like I could totally, whip that together. I could totally make that recipe.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. So today we really want to get into that world and that relationship between brand and influencer, for lack of a better word. And so what we're really looking at is, how can companies use bloggers or influencers to market themselves online? I've read a couple of studies online that suggest that 90% of companies that used influencer marketing reported success with it. And so we really want to get a better sense of that relationship between brand and blogger or brand and brand influencer. So perhaps we can get both of you to talk a little bit about the history of that relationship. How did that come about?
Sure. I know I've been talking a lot already, but I'll kick that off and then I'll let Kara kind of
kind of started with you, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah. So I was on Instagram and just kind of looking around, and I noticed what I would say is a colleague of mine. So I think of other individuals who are kind of talking about the same types of things that I do on Instagram as colleagues, because we have the same kind of direction and purpose and mission. And she had created a recipe in collaboration with another produce company. And I saw it and I thought, oh man, like that's exactly what I want to be able to do. I want more whole foods in people's diet. I want to work with a produce company. I wonder if there's anyone local, because I loved the idea of being in proximity, close proximity to whoever it was that I was going to work with, if possible. Mm-hmm. And I found NatureFresh, and I'm less than 2 hours away from the NatureFresh farms. And so I just reached out through direct message and ended up chatting on there with Kara and moved forward to meeting for coffee about a month later.
Yeah, I ended up driving down to Noelle's hometown, and we ended up having a coffee, and it just kind of felt right in a sense, where everything that Noelle was talking about, all the visions and the mission, what she wanted to promote, just aligned perfectly with the NatureFresh brand. And mm-hmm. the audience we wanted to reach was the same or very, very similar as Noelle's audience. And the content that we wanted to develop and create was the same as Noelle's. And everything that we talked about just seemed to make sense. It just seemed like she was already a part of our team. Mind you, we weren't, as NatureFresh, really at the time looking to work with any individuals in the Instagram world, so to speak. Our strategy was pretty different at that time. But we kind of just continued the conversation and continued to tag each other in posts and continued to have this like more informal relationship, I guess, so to speak. And then it just developed over time, where now, once a month, I drive down to Noelle's and we do a photo shoot and a video shoot and we gather content and stuff, right? It kind of developed over time and grew to be what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And when I reached out to NatureFresh, I wasn't at all thinking of it as, oh, is this a company I could be paid by? Like, I really just thought as, I love to develop recipes. I would love to get more salads on people's plates. I love the nutrition content of vegetables. How can I work with someone who has vegetables, mm-hmm. To kind of expand my reach? And yes, it has turned into, a partnership, but it didn't start with kind of that intention. It's just evolved over time, and it's been
like
very
the right fit,
again,
especially.
authentic and natural. And yeah, Kara and I spent a day together going down to Toronto. We went to the Food Bloggers Conference together and had a chance to talk about things that day too. And yeah, just the more time we spent together and the more we connected through Instagram as well.
She kind of over time just became a part of our team, like not an influencer, so to speak. She's just a part of the NatureFresh team.
It's really interesting. Just seems like it was obviously the right fit from the get-go and took off from there.
Yeah, and that's important.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, and especially like you said with the audience. It seems like Noelle's main audience online is, the families, obviously. Was this a group, Kara, that you were especially wanted to reach?
Yeah, I'll let Noelle talk a bit about her audience first, because it's really interesting to me. But definitely her audience was completely in line with the NatureFresh brand.
So on Instagram, about 93% of my followers are women. And the majority are between the ages of about 25 and 45. So that really speaks to kind of the gatekeepers often within the home of who is meal planning and who's bringing groceries in. And we absolutely know that there will be dads that do the grocery shopping and do the cooking. I know even in my life, my husband does some of that sometime. And it's not to say that the woman always does that, but we do know that often the woman is part of the planning, if not even doing the main of the grocery list, perhaps. And then, someone else might be grabbing those. So we do know that having a high percentage of women in terms of viewership is something that aligned for both of us.
Yeah. So, once she starts going over all of those numbers with us, and we can see kind of like, yes, she has the women, she has those influencers, so to speak. Because you know what? As much as Noelle is considered an influencer, all of the women who make purchases in their home are influencers, so to speak, amongst their family or their friends, right? So it's about leveraging each other's networks, and Noelle's network was definitely one that was valuable to us in terms of cross-promoting.
That's great. And so, Kara, so we talked a little bit about, I guess, obviously Noelle being a registered dietitian. Noelle, I also saw that you have, your Master's of Science in Food and Nutrition. Was this an important consideration for the team at NatureFresh as well, and growing that relationship?
For sure. Noelle's also a professor at the university, and she has her own private practice, right? And she does a lot of that in terms of it shows that she has a passion for education and for teaching and for showing people how to implement fresh produce into their everyday life. And that was really important to us. But also by being a registered dietitian, she has that credibility where we know that when we post something on our social feeds, or when she provides us with that insight of how our vegetables actually affect the body, we know that blog or whatever the content is accurate, and that our consumers can trust that it is accurate. No one on our NatureFresh team currently has that knowledge base or that skill set. And that's what I mean by Noelle's essentially an extension of our team. And that's how we use her as, so to speak, quote unquote, an influencer, is that she helps us in developing that content and sharing that content with those that would be valuable to us.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's really great insight for our members that, might be considering, going down the same route maybe.
Absolutely. And to hire a dietitian on our team, stuff, right? It's nice to have someone who has that perspective and is talking to students and who is out there talking to different consumers and demographics and bringing that insight into us.
And I think having that credibility and authenticity is obviously especially important for the food industry too. I'd sort of talked a little bit about those varying degrees, I guess, of credibility. And I think it's more so probably in, things like fashion and entertainment. But for something like the food industry, I think, with so much content out there, I think it's especially important to have that level of credibility and for people to be critical, I guess, of the content that's out there and know where it's coming from and go with maybe a more of a trusted and knowledgeable source.
Yeah, it's funny. Noelle and I laugh at this because we have this conversation quite a bit where influencing, so to speak, it seems like people have the perception that it's us paying Noelle to say good things about us, right? That's the perception that many people have. But in all actuality, it's developing the content and being authentic and real and just working together to develop content. It's Noelle's family already ate our produce before we, so to speak, got into this relationship, right? I mean,
Right.
She sends me videos of her little boys crying when the tomatoes aren't there. Like, it's a genuine, real relationship. And I think that has to be at the forefront of any influence or any collaboration that you do.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And there truly is a science to nutrition, right? Like when you say, you compare it to fashion or some of the other things that are on Instagram. When I'm working with my students, I'll often say, you may find you do better on your exams as the year goes on because you're learning to speak nutrition. Mm-hmm. Just the same as someone who's learning to speak another language. Mm-hmm. And, it's not a bird course topic per se, right? There's a lot of depth to nutrition. There's also so many myths out there. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can give education around the truths and have them be, the louder pieces in people's voices versus the myths that are out there, or the study that was released that really it was with 10 people. So it's not even a credible study, right? Like there's just so many opportunities for education, and we can do that with a variety of products. But when we're doing it with produce, we're going back to the farm. We're going back to the whole food. Right. And there's just so much beauty and value to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, okay, so I want to get a little bit deeper, I guess, in terms of the types of posts. And so you mentioned some of the videos that you would do. I see that, you'll tag NatureFresh in posts that maybe might feature fresh vegetables, for example. Can you both maybe expand a little bit more on that and any other ways that, you try to get that brand exposure for NatureFresh?
I think for me, the reason that I tag them is, for the most part, I honestly do try to find the NatureFresh options at my local grocery store. Sometimes if they're not available or what have you, if I'm still tagging, it's not necessarily that I'm tagging in terms of the idea of advertising. I'm just saying, this is a produce company and you can go check them out. They've got some great resources in terms of recipes and, there's lots of different tips on their blogs for different things related to nutrition, even beyond recipes. So if I tag them or if I use the hashtag, then I know I am bringing more leverage to some of the things that NatureFresh offers beyond just the fact that they grow vegetables.
Right.
And for us, anytime Noelle obviously talks to us, we see high engagement. Her audience is very engaged and loves the content that she puts out there. So that's very valuable to us when she does tag or just even uses a hashtag. That's awesome. But it's also then a chance for us to share that across our network to help build other relationships and bring other people into this partnership that we have, because I know we both value just building the community and helping increase fresh consumption as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the more that we can cross-collaborate and bring people in and tag people, it's good for everybody at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, you create that engagement online, and I think that's when, you get consumers a little bit more involved with the brand and seeing those authentic exchanges, and I think it definitely goes a long way.
Absolutely.
So what other insights would you pass on to other companies, considering a similar strategy?
I think from my perspective, one of the things is, if we want to use the word influencer, blogger, anyone along those lines, I think it's important to take a moment and really think before working with a company if you love their product, because authenticity is so key. And it can't just be jumping at this, that, and the other thing. It's truly knowing. And I not only do I love the products from NatureFresh, but I love the company. I love the people. Mm-hmm. I took the opportunity to, actually get to know them before moving forward. And sometimes that's possible and sometimes it's not possible. But if you're going to move into a long-term partnership, I think that is of great importance, and it is going to show through over time. Like Kara and I talk about, life beyond tomatoes. And that has been important. I think the second thing that comes into my mind, if I was going to say anything to companies, is just to really think before you work with an influencer. Is it Are you just thinking about what their reach is, what their numbers are on Instagram, or do they actually have some depth to them and know what they're talking about? Make sure that, that there is going to be enough for ongoing content, because one of the things I really value on my feed, and hopefully this is noticeable, is I've chosen fewer companies and to have longer term partnerships, because they're the products that we use all the time in our home. And for me, I think that has to be the direction of social media marketing.
Right.
And honestly, I would probably echo a lot of what Noelle just said. It's about that authenticity, right? When I look at how many influencers on a daily basis, honestly, it's a daily thing that influencers are reaching out to me. And sometimes when you look at it, it's bouncing around from product to product. Or 1 minute they're promoting something healthy, and the next minute it's the complete opposite, right? Mm-hmm. It's about that consistency and knowing that they're not doing it just for a paycheck, so to speak, that it's authentic, it's real, and it's actually an extension of your team, like I said earlier, right? Mm-hmm. It's more than just paying somebody to push an ad. It's working together to develop that content that can help promote healthy eating. That's important. And it's looking at it farther than beyond just the engagement or just the reach. Because honestly, sometimes those numbers that you're given unfortunately aren't always accurate, right? You need to look at it beyond just the post and see what type of influence you're having and how are you inspiring people, and does the content seem real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially, on Instagram and YouTube, where it's all out there, right? And it's all raw and real. And so I think that having that long-term relationship and that extra level of authenticity, I think is especially important. It's really, really insightful, really great. So thank you so much, Kara and Noelle. Really appreciate your time and insights.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, it's Brittany here from NatureFresh Farms. Spring has arrived and we have some great new social content to shower you with. At NatureFresh Farms, we're constantly sharing content about greenhouse growing and healthy living on our social channels. We believe social media is one of the greatest tools to help you connect with your followers while increasing your brand awareness. And by working with influencers, you can create great content and build relationships with a new audience. Don't forget to follow us on social media and visit our website at naturefresh.ca.
And next up on Produce Talks, we have Abbey Sharp. Abbey is a registered dietitian, author, blogger, and YouTuber with many of her videos hitting over 100,000 views. She can be found online at Abbey's Kitchen. Welcome, Abbey.
Thank you so much for having me.
So at CPMA, we've really noticed companies in the fresh produce industry embracing digital marketing and social media. So this episode, what we're trying to do is dive into that next level and explore the world of food bloggers, of food influencers. How do you define what you do?
Yeah, I get asked that all the time. Like I go to a dinner party, people are like, what do you do? And I don't even sometimes know where to start because I do wear a lot of hats. But basically, I'm a blogger, I'm a YouTuber, I am a media coach for other kind of influencers. I'm a social media influencer myself, but I actually prefer to call myself a media dietitian because I am a registered dietitian and a content creator. So I like the term content creator as opposed to influencer for myself because, it's nice to think of myself as an influencer, but I don't do what I do solely to influence people's purchasing decisions and things like that. My goal is ultimately to create useful, enjoyable content and hopefully reach people and touch people in doing that.
For sure. Yeah. And we talked a little bit earlier on the show, the importance of credibility and the importance of authenticity. And so obviously, especially in the food industry, having that background as a registered dietitian, I think really goes a long way.
Yeah, no, it really does. And I'm proud to be a dietitian. It's something that I try really hard to make sure that my viewers know, whether I'm like writing for a magazine or I'm appearing on someone else's platforms. I want people to know that I am coming from a place of credibility and evidence. The content that I'm putting out there is grounded in evidence because social media, there is the ability for anybody to come out and say anything that that they want. And a lot of the headlines and the content out there is so sensationalized.
Mm-hmm.
It's so sexy. So it's hard to compete with that when ultimately, as a dietitian, my goal is to present information that is grounded in research and in truth.
For sure.
But that really does create a lot of misinformation and confusion on the web. And this year I published my first book, The Mindful Glow Cookbook, and I really dive into that whole phenomenon of how social media and the dangerous information that we find there has ultimately been the root of a lot of kind of disordered eating trends and dangerous eating trends.
Yeah.
And so as a dietitian, you know, when you read my content, you know that you can trust that the information out there is grounded in the latest science. And ultimately, I have a college whose job it is to protect the public from that misinformation and dangerous information. So I don't just say things that are, you know, sexy and sensational just to get attention. You know that you're getting actual, real evidence through my content.
Yeah, I saw some of your more popular videos on YouTube are branded as sort of a dietitian's thoughts on, and you know, you're really calling out some of those pretty extreme diets, but those videos have so many hits on YouTube because it kind of has that sexy sort of spin on it. It's very bright and colorful and flashy, and so it's concerning. But so obviously, I think there's an audience out there for you and for dietitians and for chefs or anybody with a little bit more credibility, a little bit more expertise in the area, to maybe call out some of those more extreme videos, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the reasons why that kind of content has done so well is twofold. One is that people are searching for those sexy terms, whether it's keto diet or vegan diet or, you know, raw till 4, like a bunch of these kinds of like fad diets that are not that a veganism is a fad diet. I certainly think that's here to stay, but these are really kind of hot topics right now in the food world. And by utilizing some of those key terms and spinning them my way into, you know, a critique or the evidence or the research or the pros and cons and things like that, that's how I'm able to kind of garner some attention on that front and become known as the dietitian that has something to say and is not willing to kind of hide those opinions and ultimately be unbiased research on both ends. I try to give a really balanced view of what I'm seeing here, and I think that's why it's done really well.
Yeah, for sure. It's great. So let's talk a little bit about your audience. You know, who is your target audience and who do you really get those high levels of engagement from?
Yeah. So, I mean, the interesting thing is that, you know, I have a YouTube channel, I have a blog, I've got an Instagram, I've got all the social media platforms down. And in all honesty, you know, when I started my YouTube channel, I was hoping that my blog followers would just kind of like migrate over to my YouTube channel. But in fact, I didn't actually see that. They are similar audiences, but they're ultimately different audiences. So their needs are slightly different. And for that reason, I actually deliver different types of content to different platforms, knowing what performs best. But I would say that in general, my target audience is women, of course, somewhere between the ages of 25 to 50, most of which are moms, and also likely in those early stages of motherhood like I am. So I think they really can, a lot of these moms are following me and I'm getting really great engagement on my kind of mom-related content because they can identify with the stage I'm at and the struggles that I'm having. And I try to be like really authentic and genuine and tell my story and kind of walk people through what I'm experiencing in real time as a new mom. And that seems to hit really home with moms. And, you know, ultimately moms are the ones looking for food content. They're the ones trying to feed their families and look for new ideas and keep their families healthy. So that tends to be, of course, my key audience right there.
And so what are some tips that you would have for companies out there, whether they're engaging with an influencer or whether they're trying to increase their awareness or exposure online? How can companies, I guess, up their social media game?
For sure. Well, I mean, I actually run a few e-courses on my website on Abbey's Kitchen. I offer courses in social media, which is great. So you can always check that out. But I think top level engagement is key. I think it's something, it's not enough to just be creating good content and putting it out there. You need to be engaging with your audience back and forth. So get to know your audience, ask some questions, respond to their questions, make sure that any comment that is left on a social media platform, whether it's your blog or your Instagram or your YouTube, make sure that you're replying to each and every one. And I actually reply to each and every one, even the really, really nasty trolls. I get a lot of mean comments, and I reply to every single one because it's really important both for SEO or search engine optimization or the algorithms to help promote my videos, but also just for relationship building, to prove that, you're not just a bot, you're not just, a machine putting out content, scheduling out content. You're actually there living it and breathing it, and you want to be involved in the community. So tell your story, get personal, get vulnerable, and most of all, just, make sure that you're being authentic in every piece of content that goes out.
Yeah. I mean, earlier we talked a little bit about that authenticity, and the really good content online like you said, it's vulnerable, right? I think that really kind of goes a long way in terms of just having that level of authenticity, like you said. So we're talking a little bit about the world and between brand and brand influencer. I've seen you've worked a little bit with companies like Wonderful Pistachios in the past. And so you obviously have some insight in terms of what that working relationship with companies look like, and specifically in the food industry. So what can companies expect, I guess, when working with somebody like an influencer such as yourself?
So first of all, you really need to make sure it's a really good fit on both sides. So typically, you got to make sure that you're choosing an influencer that is aligned with your values, with your brand, and it has to work both ways. So their brand has to be complementing yours, and vice versa. If it's not a good fit in terms of brand kind of congruency, it doesn't matter how big that influencer is. The content's just not going to perform well, because to their audience, they're going to be like, well, this doesn't make sense in the normal context of what I know about that person. So for example, I mean, if you're a vegan influencer or you are mainly a plant-based influencer, it's not a good idea to work with an egg brand, even though maybe the money's great, and vice versa. Like it would not be a good fit. But the other thing is, on that note, you really do have to trust the influencer to tell you what's going to perform, because they know, and I know, what my audience responds to best, what performs really good. And sometimes that means being a little more subtle on the branding so that you don't lose your audience who might see it as an ad. And I know that's really hard because, as a brand, or as a food company, for example, you might think, oh, well, I want my product to be in the shot. I want to make sure that it's really clear, and you're plugging it in every single sentence or every line that you put out there. But people are going to tune out. People are not going to see it, and then it's not going to perform well. So often it's actually the subtle pieces that perform a lot better and appeal a lot better to the audience, because it doesn't feel like an ad.
Right.
So it is a collaborative process, and ultimately sometimes less is more. And then basically the way the process goes is that once a decision is made on the deliverables, so, are you going to do a blog post? Are you going to do a YouTube? What are you going to do an Instagram? And you've got a contract in place where you've outlined the terms and the fees and all that kind of stuff. Usually a brand then will send me their brand messages. What are the key things that you want me to communicate? What do you want the public to know about you? What makes you different? And from there, I will take all that information and I'll shoot some content, whatever that might be. It might be a recipe I do, or shoot a video with the product. And then I'd write the copy with those brand messages integrated and woven in kind of as naturally as I possibly can. And I really try to tell a story with my content. The story needs to feel like me. It needs to include the brand and why it fits into my life, but it still needs to be about me, and it needs to be about my audience. Why is it important that I'm telling my people this? Why does everyone need to know that this is the coolest product, or this is the most, this is the product that's going to make your life easier or better or healthier or whatever. And so typically there's a little bit of back and forth on approvals between the brand, the client, and myself. And then the content kind of goes live. And then we evaluate the process basically, and the success of the campaign, and we go from there. That's
a really good point about the subtlety, I guess, especially with, millennials and Gen Zs now, we grew up with the internet and we grew up with social media, and people know when it's an ad. People are following you for your content and not necessarily the brand's content. Definitely I could see where that could be a bit of a back and forth, but like you said, obviously having that right fit goes a long way.
Absolutely.
So getting back to what companies can do on their own social media platforms, are there any social media trends or tools that you're kind of seeing as sort of up and coming that we should keep an eye out for?
Well, I think in terms of trends, one thing that, I'm really trying to communicate to brands is that I think YouTube is really going to continue to rise in its popularity, and other video platforms as well, like Facebook Watch, for example, are really going to start to take off, because ultimately, we're seeing a real decline in broadcast opportunities, so traditional television opportunities. And I get that brands, I get so many requests like daily. Can you get me on a television show? Can you plug me on daytime or morning TV? I get so many requests for this, but the reality is those opportunities are dwindling because shows are shutting down and watch time is down because people are watching things digitally now. So I really do think that YouTube is a fantastic way to showcase a brand or product and tell a story, especially with food, because food is so visual that it really is, this is what we want to capitalize on. And it's kind of nice for brands too, as opposed to a broadcast spot, because you have full control over it. Like, I can shoot the brand shots a million times. I get exactly what I want. I know exactly what brand messages I'm going to put out. I'm not like risking anything where I have, when you do a broadcast opportunity, you've got no control over what shots the camera guys get. So this is the nice thing about doing something like a sponsored YouTube video or Facebook video or something like that, because you have that control. So video really is where it's at. And I really try to encourage people to see that as well.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a really great insight. With YouTube especially, it's certainly not going anywhere. That's for sure. Well, thanks so much, Abbey. It's definitely a really great insight. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that's it for this episode of Produce Talks. Again, you can contact CPMA for your free trial to our e-learning courses, Produce Basics and Produce Essentials. Thanks again to Noelle, Kara, and Abbey for joining us on this episode. Thank you to our sponsor, NatureFresh Farms, and thank you for listening. Again, you can subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes and Google Play. Until next time, fill half your plate with fruits and veggies, continue to seek out new knowledge, and basically never stop growing.